In this week's lecture, we are going to learn more about job stress and employee health and well-being. I've divided the lecture into 5 parts.
Now, job stress is something that many of us have experienced, and it actually is the result of a very complex set of factors working together. Technically, job stress is a situation in which job-related factors lead us to change psychologically or physiologically in a way that leads us to function differently than we would normally function. Stress, in general, is the body's response to demands in the environment. Using that definition, job stress is our response to the demands of our work, of our job, of the organization. There are at least 2 different types of stress, the good kind and the bad kind. Distress is the negative kind, the kind that we typically think of and dread. Distress makes it more difficult for us to do our job, for us to function normally.
We might experience distress if we interact with angry, rude customers on a regular basis.
Eustress is the type of stress that motivates us, drives us, gets us out of bed in the morning.
Some of us might experience eustress when we take on a new project, something we've never done before. It's a more positive experience because it challenges us, it's something we look forward to, and part of our career development. IO psychologists recognize that stress involves multiple components of human psychology, including cognition, emotion, and physiology. When we experience stress, we think about it, we evaluate the situation, we evaluate the resources that we have access to, we evaluate our capability of dealing with the situation. We also experience emotions and physiological reactions, things like increased heart rate and perspiration. Over a long period of time, stress can be damaging to both the individual and the organization. Here are some examples of the costs of chronic stress.
At the individual level, impaired physiological and psychological well-being, increased counterproductive work behaviors, things like showing up late, leaving early, stealing pens, being mean to your colleagues, increased accidents, and increased violence. At the organizational level, it might increase the risk for emotional distress lawsuits or lawsuits related to accidents that are related to job stress.
According to one model, we have a tendency to follow a series of reactions when we respond to the demands of a situation. When we are not experiencing stress, we are in a state of what the model calls homeostasis. This sequence of reactions occurs in 3 basic stages. During the alarm stage, the body recognizes the stressor, say for example, an annoying noise or a distracting coworker. At first, the stressor can be debilitating and hinder our performance. The body begins to mobilize and release certain stress hormones to help us cope with the stressor. During the resistance stage, we are able to cope with and deal with the stressor, but it depletes our energy sources. We may not be able to deal with other stressors at the time. Certain aspects of our health may begin to suffer as we approach the 3rd stage, exhaustion. During this stage, the body can no longer cope with the stressor, and its coping mechanisms begin to slow down. According to this model, it's during the exhaustion stage that many people experience psychological burnout. This is just one way to think about how we experience stress. I encourage you to look up other models of stress to help you understand how you and your employees, your colleagues, even your supervisors experience their job demands.
This figure depicts the relationship between stressors, the things that cause stress, and strains, the outcomes of stress. You see some examples of stressors. Things like poor lighting and interpersonal conflict can certainly lead to job stress. And we see some of the consequences, the outcomes, things like anxiety, depression, and turnover. This relationship between stressors, stress, and strain is impacted by personal factors and situational factors.
Stressors cause stress. Stressors come before stress. These are the physical and psychological demands of our environment. I have a few examples here on this slide, and we will cover additional examples throughout this lecture. Examples like workload, work schedule, situational constraints within the department or the work group, and even trauma in the workplace, things like workplace violence, sexual harassment, discrimination. Multiple stressors can have a cumulative effect. When people deal with multiple stressors in their work environment, they can feel very overwhelmed, and those effects can add up over time to the point where people then experience chronic stress. Physical and task stressors include things like excessive heat, loud noises, poor lighting. These are the things in our physical environment that cause stress, or things related to the job, the task. Years ago, researchers assumed that manufacturing jobs were one of the few to experience this kind of stressor. Today, we recognize that people in any job can experience this type. We don't always recognize that physical and task stressors are playing a role. You may not realize just how uncomfortable your chair is. These stressors are associated with negative physical outcomes, and we will cover examples of these outcomes later in this lecture. Psychological stressors are another category and include perceived lack of autonomy, interpersonal conflict, role stressors, work-family conflict, emotional labor, and shift work.
One of the most common psychological stressors that researchers have identified is perceived lack of autonomy or perceived lack of control. Autonomy is the extent to which we feel like we have control over our work environment, that we are empowered to make decisions about our work. When people don't have control, when they don't have say in how they do their work, but they have a lot of demands, it makes it difficult for them to reach those demands. Now, perceptions are key. We need to work on perceptions of control. It may be that an employee actually does have quite a bit of control, but they don't realize it. They don't perceive that control. Interpersonal conflict is another type of stressor that we might experience. This can be anything from a simple argument to physical violence at work, but not getting along with our colleagues can lead to stress. It can lead to an increased heart rate. It can lead to digestive problems. It can lead to absenteeism and turnover. Therefore, it is considered a psychological stressor. Role stressors are a group of different role-related stressors. Role ambiguity involves unclear expectations, uncertainty about what one is supposed to do in a role. For many of us, the first day of a new job can be full of role ambiguity. We don't know what we're supposed to do. This causes stress. This causes us to think negative thoughts. It can cause us to maybe feel nervous. Maybe we have butterflies in our stomach. Role ambiguity is common in a lot of jobs. Role conflict involves incompatible demands. Your work role might conflict with your role at school or your role at home or even your role in the community. If you need to be at two places at once, for instance, this is going to cause conflict. That conflict then causes stress on the body and on the mind. And then we have role overload, when we have too many demands, when there are so many things that we need to do that we just don't have enough time to do them all.
A specific type of role conflict that is of interest to us and to industrial organizational psychologists is work-family conflict. Sometimes it's called work-life conflict or work-non-work conflict. This occurs when people experience conflict between their work role and some other role in their life. Their role at home as a spouse, a parent, a homeowner, a friend, their role in the community, their role at another job, their role in taking care of themselves. It's important for us to recognize this type of role conflict because different people experience it differently. There are gender differences when it comes to the prevalence of this type of conflict. In general, women tend to have more roles in their lives and therefore are more likely to experience work-family conflict. However, men do experience this type of conflict, and the research is only just now exploring how other gender identities experience work-family conflict. The data from thousands of studies also suggests that two strategies, flexible schedules and employer-sponsored childcare, can be extremely beneficial to helping people manage this type of conflict. Pre-pandemic, few people had access to these options. Post-pandemic, we are seeing an increase in the availability of both.
Emotional labor involves the regulation of our own emotions in response to the emotions expressed by people in the environment. Emotional labor requires us to suppress some of the emotions that we might feel and express emotions that we don't feel. We call this surface acting. When you express an emotion that you aren't feeling, when you smile, although you're feeling very frustrated, angry, or even sad. Deep acting is a more intense form of emotional labor. Deep acting involves a more intensive transformation. With deep acting, we actually feel the emotion that we're being asked to express. So let's say you're at work and you're in a bad mood, but your job requires you to interact with the public and put on a happy face. If you use deep acting, you actually convince yourself, you change your mood, and we often use cognitions to do this, thoughts to do this. You change your mood to suit the situation. Of course, deep acting is a little bit more difficult to accomplish, but it has better outcomes. It is better for our body and our mind to use deep acting. Some of you may have a rotating shift where your schedule changes on a regular basis. Some people might work during the days for a month and then work during the night the next month. Then the third month, they're back to working during the day, and so on. Rotating shifts can be extremely hard on the body specifically, also on the mind, but also on the body. It is not natural for the body to constantly be changing its sleep cycle. So people who have rotating shifts may notice some sleep disturbances. They may also notice digestive issues and issues with appetite.